Welcome to the Startup Grind.
I want to talk about a few hard things. I'd say one of the hardest is how to select co-founders and how to deal with co-founder fighting that inevitably comes up. As I often cite, over the course of a 5 or 8 years journey, everyone's interests change, their risk tolerance change, their personal relationships change. Talk a little bit about selecting co-founders and dealing with issues as they arise.
Yeah, so there's a few principles. I think the first and most important is when you're founding a company, there's a little anxiety involved. Some of you may have experienced this. You're like, oh my God, what if this doesn't work? How am I doing this? You know, like your guts are boiling, you're feeling very uneasy. And so there's a tendency to like grab the kind of closest co-founder you can find to say, oh, okay, it's not just me now, I'm not by myself. Like that's a big mistake, right? You don't want to let your anxiety drive your decision, and that's probably the number one most important thing. Beyond that, there is something that John D. Rockefeller said that I have found very useful, which is business. He said, I have found that friendships based on business are far more long-lasting and profitable than the reverse. So just be careful about going into business with your buddies, because like that's generally the wrong reason to do it. And then thirdly, and I was talking about, this is going to be a reference that the young people don't get, but there used to be these two bands in the 60s. One was called the Beatles, and the other was called the Monkees. And the Beatles were some guys who like knew each other, respected each other, formed a band, and became like one of the kind of great bands of all times. And the Monkees were a band that was literally put together by the record company, and they said, you and you and you and you all look cool together, like you have the same haircuts, like let's make you a band called the Monkees. And the Monkees were actually pretty successful for a little while, but there was something just like fundamentally inauthentic about them, and like their big hits were all written by Neil Diamond and whatnot. And so, you know, you kind of are generally better off being the Beatles and the Monkees with a startup to really kind of work with people who you know for a while and respect and feel like, you know, you can be teammates for a long, long time. And then on founder splits, if you're not willing to equally split the company from an equity standpoint with your founders, that's probably a mistake. Like 90-10 splits and 75-20 splits tend to work less well than 50-50 splits. And it just has to do with like, I knew you stuck, that's why I took all the equity. You know, like that's kind of a funky way to start. Those are things. Now,
but Ben, how does one deal with 50-50 splits when you end up with a fundamental disagreement about the business? Are there ways in your mind to do prenuptial agreements before you start?
Well, no, like I think the way to do it is you've got vesting and somebody's the CEO. This is the other thing, like somebody needs to be the CEO in a company. Like two CEOs.
Will you fund a company where someone's not the clear CEO?
I won't. I mean, you know, to me, so it's a courage question, it's a shared command question. And like when you choose to share command, why are you sharing command? It's because you can't agree with your co-founder who should run the company. But everybody in the company is going to suffer because of that, because you don't have clear command, and decisions have to get made twice. And so, and I actually wrote a post about this, and it's best articulated by Bushwick Bill, who said, because two suckers can't agree on something, 1,000 motherfuckers die for nothing. And that's what shared command is about to me. So, and some of you have worked for shared command, yeah. And so I think somebody's got to be CEO, and then that CEO, like at that point, that's where the chain of command goes in a company, and you know they've got to make that evaluation. So in effect, in your mind, the co-founder who's not CEO, in a way, they need to understand what they're signing up to because they're not the CEO, which means if they think the CEO sucks, they can't fire the CEO, but the CEO, if they think they suck, can. Yes.
Okay, so I get a world in which there's 50-50 stock, in which there's one clear person who can break a tie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.